Alright, here we're going to compile in Helicon Focus. Alright, let's see if we can do this without any interruptions from my cat. She's insisting on being disruptive. Alright, so I've opened up Helicon Focus, and this is what you'll see when you first open it up. We're going to go up to, first thing we want to do right away is go to Edit and Preferences. And let's see, make sure the DPI of your image is set to your liking. I think it defaults to 300, which is pretty much ideal. So, and if you're going to save in JPEG, you can set the quality here by default. This is the section we need to look at real quick. The auto adjustments. The initial percentage numbers are really low, and they're assuming that you have a really high-end rail. I don't have a really high-end rail. There's a little bit of movement, and sometimes my subject settles a little bit, and so I bumped these numbers up a little bit. I've got adjust vertically at 8%, adjust horizontally at 8%, rotate up to 5 degrees, and scale 5%. That way it can, if the image is turned a little bit, it can adjust a little bit. And obviously, by the nature of focus stacking, as you move closer on the rail, your image gets slightly larger. So it needs to be able to scale your closer images down just a little bit so that they can match up with the initial images that you took during the stack. That, I know, sounds a little complicated, but it's just how it works. So anyway, the numbers I have set it to seem to be working really well. I'm sure somebody out there knows better numbers for this. I'm not a pro. So we're going to go to File, Open Images. Going to go to the folder where your stacks are being stored and find your most recent one. So here's my folder from what we just shot. Click the first one, scroll to the bottom, hold down your shift key, and click the last one, and that'll select all of them. Open it, and give it a second to bring all the files in. Alright, it'll bring in all the images, and I'm pretty sure it does everything kind of backwards, but that's alright, it doesn't matter. This is what it'll look like once all your images are in. You're going to have 3 methods available. I'm not sure which one it will default to initially, but once you set one, it will continue to go to that method. The method that I use the most is method C, the pyramid method. That's best for complex patterns with intersecting lines, or stacks with lots of images, especially over 100 images. Method B, if I remember correctly, is good for stacks that are a little less complex and don't have very large shifts in depth. And method A, I pretty much never use. You can look them up. I believe Helicon has tutorials. If I remember, I'll try to put a link to their tutorial page. It'll give much more detailed information on when you should use the different methods. I use B and C all the time. C for probably 90% of my images, and B for maybe 10%. So there's a couple of other settings. If you're in B, you're going to have radius and smoothing. The numbers are going to be a little bit high for my taste by default. I think they both were like 3s or something like that. Bringing the numbers down risks putting more artifacts or weird little halos and stuff in your image, but it also gives you sharper image in the end, so it's kind of a trade-off. It depends on what you're doing. That's something you're just going to have to play with, experiment with it. Wonderful thing is, when you compile this, it's going to create an image completed down here, and then the next one will be next to it, the next one will be next to it, and you can try all 3 different methods, and then you can try each method with all kinds of different settings and then compare them side by side before choosing which one to save, which is really fantastic. So anyway, like I said, I usually use the method C, pyramid. I've got my smoothing set to 1. I like the sharpness I get out of it. And somebody might disagree with me on that, and maybe I'm doing it wrong, but my results are pretty decent, so that's how we're going to go forward with it. This next part is a little bit long and boring. This is the part where you watch some TV or make some coffee, especially if it's a big stack. The larger the number of images in your stack, the longer it'll take. It'll take longer if you're doing raw images. Another thing that I forgot about is preferences, performances, show intermediary results during calculation. Now, I'm going to turn this on so that you can see the results, and I'm going to speed the video up massively because, like I said, this is going to take a little while, especially since it's going to take even 30% longer. I recommend you turn it off unless you don't mind waiting the extra time for your image to compile. I like to watch it. It's fun to watch. It looks really cool, but it says right there it takes up to 30% longer, and it really does take longer when it's doing this. But I'm going to turn it on so you can see it, and that's what that function does. So we're going to click render, and like I said, I'm going to speed this up massively in the video so you don't have to sit here like I do. And I'll be back with you in a minute. Alright, the image is complete, and I'm not sure exactly how long that took, but I'll check the clip and I'll put up in a little text blurb on the screen somewhere how long it was. And this image does not require any retouching, I don't think. There's a little bit of ghosting on the edge there, but I'm not going to mess with that. I don't like retouching. I'm not very good at it, so I try to not have to retouch in the first place. There are tutorials out there for retouching, and when I get better at it, I may make a tutorial, but for now, I'm probably not going to go into that really. So we're going to move on to the Save tab, and click here, Save. And my naming convention is I use FS for focus stacked. HF tells me it was in Helicon Focus because I've used other software. I like to keep track of what I've used. and so I can compare, etc. This one was at 1x magnification and 75 frames, I believe. So I always end it with a number of frames followed by an F, so that stands for the 75 frames. So I can easily reference how many frames went into that stack later when looking at the single file. So I'm going to save this as a DNG since we shot it in RAW. That way I can open it in Photoshop's RAW editor and have more control over it. I know I have some dust on my sensor, so I'm going to have to do some cleanup. So we're going to click Save. And that is it. Alright, here we're going to compile in Affinity Photo. We're going to go to File, and then we're going to select New Focus Merge. Select Add. As we did in the others, we're going to find our stack folder. Select our files. I'm going to do this with the JPEGs because it'll be much faster, since I ended up creating them trying to get Photoshop to work without success. It may say not responding, but it usually catches up after a minute. It's a lot of data to load. Alright, it's loaded all the images. We're going to select OK. Affinity Photo has probably the coolest visual as it builds the image. Similar to Helicon, but a little more detailed, I think. And this will pretty much automatically do everything if I remember correctly. It's been a little while since I used this one. I really liked Affinity for stacking, but the ultimate results are softer. They don't have as crisp of a focus as you get from Helicon. Alright, so that actually went on through. It looks like Affinity did a good job too. Alright, so anyway, that's how you do it in Affinity Photo. It looks like it did a really nice job on the image. So you would save it, and from here you'd process it however you normally would. Use your own filters, whatever you do if you're using Affinity Photo. For the next video, I'm going to process my original RAW from Helicon in Photoshop. So that's where we're going to pick up. Alright, I've had some real issues getting Photoshop to put this stack together at all. I could not get it to take it to work with the RAW files. I converted them to JPEGs and tried again, and pretty much Photoshop crashed a second time. So I rebooted my computer in the hopes that maybe we'll get through this. I've had quite a bit of trouble getting this to work. Photoshop is not cooperating with me. It just simply will not let me do a stack with 75 image layers. So I'm going to use a different stack. It's not nearly as good of an image. It's one I did the other day, but I still have the stack files sitting around. So, well, actually I keep most of my stack files, the good ones. But hopefully this one will go through. Fingers crossed. In order to stack in Photoshop, we're going to go to File, down to Scripts, and we're going to select Load Files into Stack. I'm going to select Browse. I'm going to find our folder with our stack in it. I think this is, yep, this is the one. I couldn't get it to work at all with the raw files, so I did a batch conversion to JPEG in the hopes that this will be more cooperative. I'm going to select the very first image, scroll down, and hold Shift, click the last image. That'll select all of them. Click OK to open them. Once this list populates, we can click OK. This stack will be 32 images. It's a little tiny fly that landed on the bark while I was taking pictures of lichen. So we give Photoshop a minute to load the images into layer files. I should be able to pull this one off simply because I've done stacks this deep in Photoshop, I think. I don't use Photoshop very much for it because Photoshop just doesn't do a good job, in my opinion. The parts that it does well, it has great detail, but it screws up all kinds of things for me. Too much work fixing it. Alright, those files are loaded. So we're going to go to Select, All Layers, or alternate Control A. Then we're going to go to Edit, Auto Align Layers. It should default to auto. We're going to leave it as it is and click OK. And this is where my problem happened last time. We'll see what happens. If it doesn't work this time, I don't know what to do. Oh, it's working! Yay! Alright, this time it worked. I'm very, very happy. Alright, now our layers are aligned. Finally. The next step is to click Edit. This time, Auto Blend Layers. Make sure Stack Images is selected, and Seamless Tones and Colors, Content Aware Fill, Transparent Areas should both be selected, ideally, and hit OK. This process will take a few minutes, generally. I'll probably skip forward to the end of it for you so you don't have to wait with me. And that is complete. So from here, you're going to select Layer and Flatten Image. And you are done. If you want to know how to make corrections to movement, like say the bug moved its antenna, you're going to need to watch some tutorials because I can't do it in Photoshop. I've tried and I find it unbelievably irritating, which is why I bought Helicon. The rest of the tutorial will continue using the photos that were shot for this tutorial. As I said before, we just used this set because I couldn't get Photoshop to handle a stack of 75. It is another drawback to Photoshop. It just, maybe with a more powerful computer it can do it, but not with mine. Let's go ahead and have a look at how this looks up close. See, here's the problem. All of these spots would need to be repaired. I couldn't figure out what it was doing. So we got here, 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 all of this, here, 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 here. Yeah. Photoshop, not the best for stacking. Now granted, this can be fixed if you go and find somebody else's tutorial. If I ever learn how to do it in Photoshop, I'll probably do a tutorial, but I'm probably not going to bother to learn how to do it in Photoshop. But if your stack is more of a simple subject like the one from the main subject from the tutorial, it's not going to be as much of an issue, especially if you choose like a really smooth subject like marbles or something like that. They'll come out much better in Photoshop, generally.